Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Number one item on the agenda, number one, election of officers. Before we go to that, I want to have some discussion pertinent to that before we get there, and I'm going to ask Director Wasley if he could help us out because he's had as many conversations with the governor's office, probably more than I have. So could you tell us where we're at with appointments and why Mike Macbeth and I happen to be sitting here, and then I'll chime in, and then we'll go to Commissioner Drew to read some stuff also.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'd say that there was a desire to maintain some consistency through the process with some of the issues that we're currently dealing with, namely some of the trapping issues. There was some concern that bringing new appointments on for this meeting might be unfair to those individuals and wouldn't do the issues justice given the amount of public testimony that this board has heard. So as it stands now, I think that the governor's office, with my support, has determined that it would be best for these issues to maintain the consistency on the commission, get some closure on these issues prior to bringing new members on.
Okay. Commissioner Drew, could you read our policy one in terms of selection of a chair and vice chair?
Yeah, Commission Policy Number 1 under Procedures, Number 1, Selection of Chair and Vice Chair, Terms of Office states that during its first regularly scheduled meeting following July 1st of each year, the first order of business will be election of officers. The Commission shall select a chair and a vice chair from among its members who will continue to serve until the new election in the following year. In case of temporary absence of the chair, powers and duties shall devolve upon the vice chair. A commissioner cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms as chair. I guess the one point that I would emphasize is it talks about selecting a chair and a vice chair from among its members who will continue to serve. And at this point, I believe we only have 4.
Yes. There was no reappointments made of Commissioner McNinch is seeking reappointment. Commissioner Wallace and Commissioner Drew are seeking reappointment. Commissioner Macbeth and I have chosen not to seek reappointment. So with that being said, we have 4 commissioners that we are assured will be on the commission until the next election. With that being said, the only ones that could be chosen by Rule 1, Policy 1, Number 1, would be somebody that is going to be on the commission through the next election. And with 5 people not knowing where they're at, that leaves 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each commissioner that is going to remain, if Commissioner Young, Commissioner Morai, Commissioner Bliss, or Commissioner Lane, if any of them have any interest in being chairman moving forward. And if I don't see any interest of being chairman, what I think our best bet would take a motion to table the election of a chairman at this point. Then wait until we get a new commission seated, and then let those commissioners that know that they're going to be here and the new appointees select who their chair is going forward. So Commissioner Young, do you have any interest in being a chairman?
Well, I don't want to say I don't have any interest, Mr. Chairman, but I think that my position is that I won't seek it until we have an opportunity to know who is going to be on our commission, because certainly with four, we have three qualified people. I'm not saying I am, but the other three definitely are. But I sure hate leaving Jeremy and, who else? Is it Grant and Dave that are, assuming that the governor will reappoint them, but that's only an assumption. I have no idea. So I'm going to decline it and wait and see who gets reappointed, because there's obviously more qualified, longer-serving people that are much more knowledgeable about the commission and its workings than me as a less two-year member. And specifically, Dave and Jeremy have been doing this a long time, and I'm thinking out loud that the governor will probably reappoint them. If he doesn't, it'd be a shock to me. So the
Okay.
answer for me is no.
Okay, Commissioner Morai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no interest in seeking chairmanship.
Okay. Commissioner Lane.
I have no interest at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Bliss.
Chairman Robb, I feel the same way that Commissioner Young feels, and at this time I don't have any desire to step into that chairman spot.
Okay. With that being said, I know what the last line of Commission Policy 1, number 1, reads: a commissioner cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms as chair. I've done my 2 times as chair, and this would be entering into my 3rd. And I do not, we have policies, they're a guidance, they're not a direct, they're not in law. It's just as a guidance to the commission. But we have policies for a reason, and that's guidance, and I don't like going against our own guidance. So with that being said, I would like to not be chairman this meeting, because I don't think I am. And like Commissioner Drew, there is no end on or how many terms somebody can be vice chairman, and with the absence of the chairman, the vice chairman runs the meeting. So is there any discussion amongst the commissioners if I turn the meeting over to Commissioner Drew and have him run it as the vice chair? Commissioner Macbeth.
Certainly respect your position, but I would say that there's probably an alternative position that technically your term hasn't ended until you're off the commission, and therefore there would be no problem with because I don't think NRS really deals with this. It says that we have to elect a chairman and a vice chairman amongst our ranks, but I don't think it really talks about the details. But anyway, subject to our DAG, I don't know if you have the NRS up in front of you, but so I would just say that that I wouldn't have a problem with it, with the commission continuing. And on the issue of electing, I think the expectation is that when new commissioners come on, that they have an opportunity to elect the new commission chairman and vice chairman. And so I certainly don't want to be voting on that at this point. So I think that's a good move.
Any other commission comments? And this is an action item. We'll take it out to public comment. Seeing none, any public comment on agenda item number 1? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to ask Mr. Newton if we have you have any legal advice, and is everything that was said by both Mike and Chairman Robb correct?
Everything that's been said is correct. I don't have any particular advice other than you always want to strive to follow your own policy, even though it's not set in statute or regulation. And I believe what's been discussed here comports with that policy. It's just a unique set of circumstances where there are 5 commissioners that are somewhat in limbo, and we have the meeting where the election is supposed to occur.
Right. With the specific part that I need some advice on, David, is what Commissioner Macbeth just said. are they continuing their terms, or was there a break on the date of their expiration of their term? And in light of the governor not accepting their resignations and asking them to stay on, are they in their second term or third term? Or an intern term, I guess you would call it, until the new commission's appointed?
Their term would continue until the governor either appoints a replacement or reappoints them to the commission.
So Macbeth is a pretty smart lawyer then, he's got that then right then. Okay, thank you.
I treat that as a default position, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Macbeth.
We're on a continuity theme here, and I actually feel comfortable with either, Chairman Robb or Vice Chairman Drew, moving forward. But I know that Chairman Robb has been dealing with these issues for 2+ years. Well, 3 years actually, and 3+ years. And so, if the theme of having us come back is continuity, I think that it probably makes more sense to keep it at the status quo, with Chairman Robb continuing as chairman and Vice Chairman Drew continuing, and then when the appointments are made, then the election will be taken and they'll move on. But that's just my thoughts on it. No disrespect to either one.
You threw a new wrinkle into it, Commissioner Macbeth, because I was ready to give the microphone to Commissioner Drew. This is a conversation we've had for the past 24 hours, how we're going to do this chairman thing. Commissioner Drew was unavailable until yesterday when he called. Well, yeah, he was out of town without a cell phone. So we've thought about this back and forth many ways, and I'd be extremely comfortable having Commissioner Drew run the meeting, and I fully understand what you're saying. I don't want to overstep my bounds and do something that goes against policy, but the way you read this policy, it's not black and white. So, Mr. Newton, can I ask the rest of the commissioners as a vote what we should do? But it's really not agendized that way, but Commissioner Drew has something to say before you go.
Maybe rather than asking the question, I'll make a motion and then look to you to make sure I haven't overstepped my bounds. But in reading Policy 1, it states, the commission shall select a chair and vice chair from among its members who will continue to serve until the new election in the following year. So with that in mind, what I would do is I would make a motion to table the election, given the discussion that's happened here today, and maintain Chairman Robb as chair and myself as vice chair until such a time that new appointments and or reappointments are made.
I'd second that.
That works perfectly.
Perfectly for everybody but the guy that wanted out of this today.
I still think it works perfectly, but
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Commissioner Robb opposed it, but I guess I'm running a meeting. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, roll call. Suzanne? Here.
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 You're already taken off the list, Commissioner Macbeth.
This isn't a game that the department has been playing because she didn't have my Southwest frequent fire stuff and all my password stuff that she had done all the tickets all the time. So I know that NDOW didn't have anything to do with this.
Okay, County Advisory Boards, please stand and announce yourself. Okay, thank you, guys. We'll move on to agenda item number 3. Approval of agenda. We'll take it out to public comment. Is there any public comment on the agenda? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any comment on the agenda?
Move to approve.
Commissioner Morai?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this for today's agenda only?
No. We have approval of agenda both days, but it's one agenda. So I think if we have an adjustment that we may need to make tomorrow, I think if there's something we need to adjust tomorrow, the more lead time we can give the individuals, if we make an adjustment to adjust their schedule for tomorrow, I think that would be the best thing we could do. I know Commissioner Morai has a family wedding that he needs to attend, but he'd like to make a couple votes tomorrow. I know that we have 3 commissioners that have a earlier flight back to Las Vegas than normal with the decreased flights at Southwest. So I'd like to see a couple of the items on tomorrow's agenda rearranged today so we don't catch people off guard tomorrow. Commissioner Morai, do you have any suggestions?
I'd like to see the 18B and 18C moved to between the County Advisory Board member items and the Trapper Education agenda items for Saturday.
For Saturday. Commissioner Drew?
I would make a motion to that effect so that we would have for Saturday, agenda item 16, agenda item 18B, agenda item 18C, agenda item 17, and then 18A and 19.
We have a motion by Commissioner Drew, second by Commissioner Wallace. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we got the motions in front of public comment. Any public comment on what you've just heard? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to member items and announcements, correspondence. Any commissioner have anything you want to bring forward? Commissioner McBath.
This was actually going to be an issue that I was going to raise last meeting, and it was related to the issue of what we were dealing with on the a couple of the heritage vendors and the statements and the concerns that we had with respect to these vendors taking a portion or tacking on a portion of the fees, tacking a fee onto the sale of the heritage tag and lessening the amount of money coming to the state for the sale of those tags. And the concern was in that issue that we have these special tags, and we want to make sure that the money goes to the state and for wildlife. And that's obviously an issue that I'm absolutely supportive of. But what I find a little interesting is that we have another system in place for the sale of incentive elk tags and landowner deer and antelope tags. And what has happened, well, let me take a step back. These are state wildlife resources, and when we sell tags, and I believe even an RS indicates that money goes into the state's accounts to fund wildlife management activities. We made an exception for tags that are basically provided to landowners, ranchers, farmers, whose private property is impacted by these wildlife. And so that being the exception, that the money go to the ranchers and the farmers. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is that third parties are purchasing these tags and from the ranchers with no intention of using the tags, but of basically brokering in those tags and selling the tags. And so the spread between what the third party purchases the tag and what they eventually sell it for goes into their pocket. And so those funds are not being used to fund wildlife management activities. They are going to profit-making businesses. And that I have a major problem with. I don't think that that was really what was intended. And I would hope that maybe in the future that this commission take a good hard look at that. And I will say that I can see where certain businesses like that can be provide benefits and increase the value of those tags, and they should probably be compensated for that. But I think that what is happening is not what was intended, and that they are probably getting well more than a commission that they otherwise would get for selling something like that. And so anyway, I would hope that that this commission might want to take a look at that, and maybe the department take a look at it, and maybe there's a way to sell those tags to make sure that the money goes to the ranchers where it should be going.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Drew?
I've got two. I've got a correspondence that was asking, in our last meeting, I think we had some discussion and made a motion to direct staff to develop an offset in relation to Corn Creek in southern Nevada. And I was asked why that was not on the agenda or not part of our trapping discussion. That did require a new number from LCB. And at the time when we set the agenda, Director Wasley and I visited, and I don't believe we had gotten that back from LCB, although we did get a placeholder so that regulation would be permanent when we do get it back from LCB. Am I correct in that?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Okay. The discussion happened quite some time ago, but it should be back, I believe. If it's not back yet, it should be back for our September meeting in Las Vegas, which regionally I think would be more appropriate anyway.
Yeah, I'll do some follow-up and perhaps be able to provide you an update at some later point in this meeting even.
Right. But I believe it's my fault or under my advisement that it's not on this agenda. So I just wanted to make that clear. The other item that is not on the agenda is the NACO lawsuit. I believe we had discussed that Chairman Robb, myself, and Director Wasley would meet with the governor's office. We did that shortly after our meeting in Tonopah to discuss the NACO lawsuit, some of our concerns in terms of overpopulations of wild horses on the range. They are well aware of the lawsuit. They are well aware of the issues associated with the wild horses. And at this point, we have not gotten any advisement back on that. So that's why you don't see that item on the agenda either.
Any other commissioners have anything to bring forward? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that item and we'll move on to agenda item number 5, County Advisory Boards to Manage Wildlife member items. Do you have anything to bring forward that's not on the agenda? Quiet day today in the audience. Okay. We'll move past agenda item number 5 and move on to agenda item number 6, approval of minutes. Commission minutes from May and June commission meetings. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns with the minutes? Okay, this is an action item. Any public comment on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
I would move to approve both the May and June 2014 minutes as presented by the department.
We have a motion by Commissioner Drew, second by Commissioner Wallace. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed unanimous. We are going to move on to Commission item number 7, petition, Mr. John Potash for possible action. This has to do with reptiles. Is Mr. Potash available? Come on up.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is John Potash, for the record. How long do I have to speak?
Since you're the petitioner, there is no time limit.
Okay.
We need to know what you're bringing forward, so you're not on the clock.
All right, appreciate that. Well, I'm here today to ask your consideration to add an exemption to NAC 503.110, Section 3, that would allow our business, Get Rattled, rattlesnake avoidance training for dogs, to grow and expand into new areas. It was brought to my attention Wednesday evening that the Washoe County Advisory Board had made a recommendation to deny this petition. After reviewing the minutes from that meeting, I believe that many of their concerns had simple answers that I believe would have changed the outcome of their decision. Unfortunately, I was never notified that the petition was going to be on the agenda. Otherwise, I absolutely would have been there to address that. I do have a handout here that includes the meeting minutes, their concerns, and my responses to those concerns. I don't know if I can hand these out.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
A brief background about myself and Get Rattled. I was raised in Nevada since I was 3 months old, therefore I'm basically a lifetime resident of Nevada. My interest in reptiles began when I was in high school, and I was lucky enough to meet a professional herpetologist who took me under his wing and taught me many things about reptiles, including how to safely care for and handle venomous reptiles. Since then, I've continued to work with a variety of reptiles along with other wildlife in numerous capacities. I studied herpetology at UNR and worked in the herpetology department. I spent 13 years doing wildlife rescue, rehabilitation, exotic animal adoptions, and educational presentations in northern Nevada. Board member of the International Herpetological Symposiums, and I also served on the Washoe County Animal Control Board for numerous years. My business partner, Willie Stevens, who unfortunately could not be here today due to medical complications with one of his dogs, he has been training, hunting, and pointing dogs for over 20 years, and he's also an AKC and NASTRA judge for pointing dogs at hunt tests and field trials. While Get Rattled, the business, is in its infancy, Willie and I have been providing this training for 14 years in northern Nevada as nonprofit fundraisers. Seeing an ever-increasing need and desire for this service in other areas, Willie and I started Get Rattled. As a continued demand for the service grows, so does our need to be able to expand to meet those needs. Already, we have expanded well beyond Reno to do training classes in Minden, Gardnerville, Pahrump, Las Vegas, Fallon, Winnemucca, Elko, as well as many locations in Northern California. We were recently approved by the Utah Department of Natural Resources for a certificate of registration allowing us to conduct this training in Utah, as well as we have the permit application and a tentative verbal approval for Oregon as well. We've been invited to do a fundraiser event for a desert museum in New Mexico and to promote our training at a rattlesnake festival in Texas. So as you can see, expansion seems to be inevitable, provided our ability to expand with it. There's a couple major reasons why we are asking for a change that would allow for authorization to possess prohibited species. For maximum effectiveness in the training, we prefer to use species of snakes that are most likely to be encountered in any given area, especially for the scent recognition portion of the training. We will not regularly be able to obtain those species immediately prior to a training in other states. Also, as is the case in many states, if we were authorized to capture a snake for use in the training, we would not be allowed to release it after the training and would be forced to euthanize it, which is highly against our moral code. Another aspect of this training is to educate and encourage the attendees to respect these animals. Many of the snakes I currently possess for the Nevada trainings are well over 10 years old. It's far more reasonable to capture and possess a couple snakes of a specific species and use them continuously over their lifetime instead of having to catch and euthanize and catch again. Also, we often employ the use of venomoid snakes, which means that the snakes have had their venom glands surgically removed for safety purposes. This is a very costly procedure, and it would be extremely impractical for us to have that procedure done and not be able to keep the snake for the duration of its lifetime. Another expansion of our service that has been very well received by the public and anticipated is porcupine and skunk avoidance training. We have already been approved for porcupines under our commercial wildlife permit and are working on acquiring captive-born porcupines to use for this training. We have also made arrangements for the porcupines to go on display at a local zoo in between training uses. The exemption we are requesting would allow us to do the same for skunks. We would purchase captive-born skunks from a USDA-regulated dealer to use in the training, and they would be spayed and neutered to prevent reproduction and to help prevent any behavioral problems. We do understand that skunks are classified as a rabies vector species, but then again, so are domestic cats. These skunks would not be exposed to wild animals, and while physical contact between the dogs and the training animals does not occur during our training, we would still require any dogs attending the event to have current rabies vaccinations. We also would be required to have a USDA permit to use these animals for the training, so animals will be cared for under those federal standards. I would like to be very clear about one thing regarding this request. We are not asking for these animals to be legalized where anyone could possess them. We are simply asking to add an exemption that would allow the Department of Wildlife to add these to the existing commercial possession permits based on the individual merits of the request. The Department of Wildlife would remain in complete control of which animals are allowed and not, along with any stipulations such as microchip identification or bonds. There are currently 6 listed exemptions under NAC 503.110 subsection 2, including accredited zoos and aquariums, persons using prohibited animals in state for entertainment or commercial purpose so long as they are not in the state for more than 90 days, college, university, and other governmental agencies for scientific or public health research, scientific institutions for research or medical purposes, commercial aquaculture with some conditions of bonding, and tax-exempt nonprofit organizations that exhibit wildlife for education or scientific purposes. Thus, as it stands right now, the department can issue a permit to someone coming in from out of state to possess prohibited species and do exactly what we are requesting to do, so long as they are not in Nevada for more than 90 days. We are a tax-paying, Nevada-based business, and it is reasonable to believe that we should have the same right to possess these animals for the same purposes. I certainly consider our request to be very sound and practical and hope that you do as well. Thank you for taking the time to hear my request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Macbeth?
Do you currently do any breeding of the snakes that you have in your possession?
I do not.
And is there any intent to breed the snakes coming in?
No.
So
It
you
would simply be for possession for the
only?
training purposes, yes.
Okay. And personally, I'd like to, I think you're going to probably ask the department to weigh in on this issue. I really want to hear what the department has to say. And I do have another comment, but I'm going to wait for the department to speak on the issue.
Commissioner Lane?
Maybe I guess I would like to hear the department speak first before I start asking questions as well.
Okay. If you give us a few minutes, we'll ask the department questions, and then we'll probably have you come back to the podium, and we'll go back and forth for a bit and figure out where we're at. Okay?
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay. Director Walsley, do you want to make a statement, or do you want to bring somebody up?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with just kind of a general statement. It's a far more complex issue, not only from the permitting side of things. There's far more entities involved, and I guess I'd like to have law enforcement speak to that. And then there's some significant wildlife health concerns, and our veterinarian, Dr. Perry Wolf, is here, and following law enforcement's perspective, I guess I'd like to have Perry speak to some of the wildlife health issues related. So if Paul could perhaps speak to some of the permitting, some of the other entities involved in this, to kind of start things off, and you can ask him questions, and then Perry will follow with the wildlife health concerns.
Thank you, Tony, and good morning. For the record, Paul Lankowski, Acting Chief Game Warden, and I've known John for a lot of years, and his presentation was very accurate, and I appreciate all the information that he brought forward. Mr. Potash is petitioning the Commission to add an exemption, like he said, to NAC 503-110, which is our prohibited species regulation. And we'll start off with the skunks, since he asked for two different species. But for the possession of skunks, which are prohibited under Section 1B, number 11, and to begin with, skunks are regulated by the Department, first and foremost, by the Department of Health and Human Resources, the Board of Health. And under their NRS and their NACs, they state that a person shall not intentionally keep, harbor, or in any way care for, maintain, lodge, or feed on private property a bat, skunk, raccoon, fox, or coyote. But they do defer to the local rabies control authority and to the Department of Wildlife to be able to grant an exemption to that NAC. So next, the skunks are regulated by the Nevada Department of Agriculture, which is the State Board of Agriculture. And their NAC says a person shall not ship, transport, or otherwise move foxes, skunks, or raccoons into Nevada. So Mr. Potash would have to petition the State Board of Agriculture to amend that NAC, which is NAC 571075, in order to allow for the importations of skunks into Nevada. Skunks are also regulated by the Washoe County Regional Animal Services, the Animal Control Board. And under their regulations, which they pretty much adopt from the State Board of Health, they would have to grant a variance in order to allow for the possession of a skunk in Washoe County. And Mr. Potash's business is based out of Washoe County. Also, the City of Sparks zones, their regulations prohibit the species in certain zones of the city. So Mr. Potash would have to contact the City of Sparks and whatever process they may have to allow for possession of a skunk within the city limits. And then finally, the skunks are regulated by Nevada Department of Wildlife. And the bottom line through all of our different NACs that we have on that is, unless an exemption to the State Department of Ag, NAC 571075, is granted by the Department of Ag to allow for the importation of the skunks, Mr. Potash would not have a legal method to obtain a skunk. Right now, for the Nevada Department of Wildlife regulations, it's unlawful to capture live wildlife in this state to stock a commercial wildlife facility. And the only other places that he could get a skunk from would be a breeder or a dealer in that wildlife, and there are none in Nevada. And being not able to import one in because the Department of Ag won't allow that, he cannot bring in one that's lawfully collected from another state. So there's a little issue of him going to a couple different agencies. Unless a variance is granted by the Washoe County Animal Control Board, Mr. Potash cannot possess that species, like I said, in Washoe County. And under NAC, our NAC, 503-597, excuse me, NRS 503-597, it states that the person wishing to bring in a species would have to conduct an investigation to prove that the importation and possession of that species would not have any detrimental effect on native wildlife. NDAL is only one of several agencies that need to weigh in on Mr. Potash's request. Without speaking officially for these other agencies, I've had some phone discussions with them. Their representatives indicated that they would not automatically be in favor of granting an exemption just based on the actions of the Wildlife Commission. Dr. Perry Wolf has some information on the Nevada NDAL concerns on these, on particularly skunks at this time.
For the record, Dr. Perry Wolf, the Department of Wildlife. My concern about this bringing skunks in is that I think you all do have the map that we provided, but currently Nevada is one of the few states that does not have a terrestrial reservoir for rabies. We have bat rabies, which is pretty much found throughout the United States, but at this point in time, we do not have rabies that is in a reservoir such as skunks, raccoons, or foxes, which occurs throughout most of the rest of the United States. And certainly, once we have any type of disease that becomes endemic in wildlife, then of course, it's almost impossible pretty much impossible to ever get it back out again. And this would have implications for domestic animals and livestock and wildlife in that we would now have a terrestrial species that had its own form of rabies, and it was a reservoir species. There currently is no live test for rabies, so any skunk that would travel in or outside of Nevada or even be in Nevada, you can't really tell that it has rabies unless you remove its brain and test it. And there is also no approved vaccine for rabies in wildlife. We have approved vaccines for domestic dogs, cats, horses, and everything, and we do vaccinate other livestock species, but there is no approved vaccine for wildlife. So any wildlife that would bite somebody is automatically euthanized and tested for rabies. I've had some discussions with Dr. Michael Greenlee, who is my counterpart in the Department of Ag. He's a state agricultural veterinarian, and we both discussed the fact that, Nevada sits in a nice position right now and that we do not have terrestrial rabies in the state, nor do we really want it in the state.
I got one question for you. Do you have any problem with the part of his request about the snakes?
I'm going to cover that after Paul goes through the legal aspects.
Okay.
Yes, I do have some concerns.
Great. We're going to follow up with part 2, which is the non-indigenous venomous snakes, including the cottonmouth copperheads. And I believe Mr. Potash asked the western region for timber rattlesnakes, eastern diamondback rattlesnakes. Mr. Potash is petitioning the Commission to add the exemption again to NAC 503-110 to allow for these non-indigenous venomous snakes, which are currently prohibited under Section 1B, number 9, which are the pit vipers and true vipers, except for the species indigenous to this state. So non-indigenous venomous snakes are regulated by the Washoe County Regional Animal Services, the Animal Control Board, and they have several requirements for possession and caging requirements for these species. But the bottom line on that one is Mr. Potash would have to apply for a permit and request a variance from the Washoe County Animal Control Board to import and possess venomous reptiles in Washoe County, regardless of the actions taken today. And then obviously the city of Sparks weighs in again with the zoning laws. So Mr. Potash would have to contact the city of Sparks to obtain approval to possess the venomous reptiles in certain zoning areas of Sparks. And then Nevada Department of Wildlife regulates venomous reptiles. And some of our concerns, separate from Dr. Perry Wolf's concerns, would be, and I've spoken with the Division Administrator of Wildlife Diversity, Laura Richards, and she's weighed in on some of these here. The expansion of an exemption to NAC 503-110 to allow for other commercial ventures with prohibited species, potential of these species breeding in captivity, and if they do, what would the disposition of any progeny from that breeding, the possibility of release and the related public safety concerns over release, the possibility of release into the wild and the potential effects on native wildlife. Again, proper caging requirements, especially in cities and counties that may not have any ordinances that already deal with that. Proper handling procedures in and around the public. Proper procedures for removal from the caging requirement. And permits are often required by other states to conduct this type of business, and the transportation and importation of venomous snakes into those states is very highly regulated. So that they would have to weigh in on a business moving snakes back and forth across state lines. Mr. Potash would have to conduct an investigation to prove that the importation into Nevada of non-indigenous venomous snakes would not be detrimental to existing wildlife. The Commission could add an exemption to NAC 503-110 to allow these prohibited species to be imported and possessed for use in a commercial business. However, there are other agencies, including state, county, and city, which also have to grant variances, permits, or permission to import and possess these species. And again, without speaking officially for the other agencies, I've had phone discussions with them, and again, their representatives would not automatically be in favor of granting an exemption. Mr. Potash would have to go through their processes in order to see if they would allow the possession within the other jurisdictions. And again, NDOW is only one agency out of several that need to weigh in on Mr. Potash's request. And then Dr. Perry Wolf is going to address the health concerns.
Let's see. So what my concerns are for bringing snakes in and out of Nevada, especially snakes that are non-native to the state. This is looking down a tube at a timber rattlesnake with an emerging infectious disease that is primarily located on the East Coast called snake fungal disease. And we don't know a tremendous amount about it at the moment. But again, it's an emerging infectious disease, and it's been known to cause some problems. On the East Coast, it's been found from New Hampshire all the way to Minnesota and down to Arkansas, and it's also been reported in 8 species of snakes, including timber rattlesnakes, copperheads, and cottonmouths, and also species of snakes that are found native in Nevada. So some of the non-venomous snakes, it's not just a venomous snake disease. And this is the range of some of those animals, so that you can see it's not surprising why it's found in those, because they are on the East Coast and Midwest. Do we know if we have this disease in Nevada? No, we do not. We do not suspect that we do, because it has not been reported. There's not a lot known about this. There's been 2 other fungal diseases that have come to light in the past 5 or 6 years, 10 years, that have caused devastation in wildlife, including the chytrid fungus in amphibians, which has decimated a number of amphibian populations around the world, and also white nose syndrome, which has caused a 90% decline in bats in states such as New York and Vermont. Currently, we regulate cavers that come, or people that work in our mines to help us with our bat situations. They are not allowed to bring any of their equipment that they've used where white nose syndrome has been identified. They are not able to bring it and use it in any of our mines or any of our cave situations in Nevada, even though we have hired them to come and do that, because there's a strong suspicion that that fungus was brought to the United States potentially on a fomite, which would be caving equipment, shoes, and that we know that bats probably are spreading it, but there's also a very strong suspicion that it's being spread by people just walking around. So it's these types of diseases that we don't know a lot about. We think, oh, well, the animals won't be contacted with other snakes, but we don't understand enough about how these diseases are spread on people's clothing, on people's equipment, that sort of thing. So any animals that are coming in and out of the state of Nevada that are even sitting on the ground or their equipment is being used, to me presents a risk for a disease, this emerging disease, which has been having some population level effects in some species of snakes, including the timber rattlesnake, which is threatened in 11 states out of its range. So it's just this type of thing that concerns me, that we don't know that much about it, and are we taking a large risk by having snakes that would have to be brought in from outside of our range and moving them in and out of the state and potentially exposing them when we don't know very much about the disease. Yes?
Doctor, is there a way for you or a veterinarian to test these snakes or any of these animals that Mr. Potash, I'm talking specifically about his business, when he, as soon as they arrive in the state of Nevada, if he were to directly go to you or the Department of Wildlife's selected veterinarian and have them tested for any of these kind of diseases, and then maintain a quarantine? Obviously, I get what you're saying about if they have it and they spread the germs or whatever, on equipment, on the ground, on clothing and whatnot. But if they don't have the disease, from a layman's standpoint, it sounds like we wouldn't have an issue as long as they were quarantined and didn't go back to the other state and bring it back. But if he had